Looking back on your 40 years in the landscape business, what's one financial lesson that shaped your approach to running a profitable company?
The first financial lesson that we really had was we had to charge the right price to be in business. You'll get tons of business at a low price for sure. And there's a point in time where you have to take a leap of faith and say, is this business viable? Then I have to charge the market rates. And we did that through trial and error. The second big one was we actually made a $250,000 profit, and we had so much money we didn't know what to do with it back then. This was 35 years ago. And we ended up paying cash for two vehicles. And I think they were 100,000 each back then. And we almost went bankrupt on cash flow. So those were two big lessons. The other big one was really understanding how the income statement transfers to your pricing mechanism. So understanding how to recover your overhead, your costs, setting up clean books, setting up clean accounting. So we were fortunate to learn those lessons early, and we had great accountants and great controllers and bookkeepers through the entire history of the company, and that's made a huge difference.
Okay, and just for this one thing, the first thing that you mentioned of charging the right price, how long were you not charging the right price, and how hard was it to finally kind of make that mindset shift?
Yeah, we probably were 5 or 6 years, I would say, and we were working like crazy hours, sometimes at night under lights, making probably less than minimum wage back then if you added it all up. And so we bought houses, we got married, and it became an imperative to charge the right amount of money. We couldn't stay in mom's basement any longer. And then at that point, that the real cost of business kicks in. So up until then, there were business subsidies, which we had, and everybody has some sort of subsidy, whether it's the wife doing the books for free or using your dad's garage or whatever it is that you're doing. But at the end of the day, those things run out, and then the real cost of business kicks in. So we essentially decided to put ourselves out of business by raising our price when no one hired us. And sure enough, we never run out of business. And so the lesson to this for everybody is you got to raise your price. I think the other thing we did was started charging for design. That also added new revenue to the business. It also became a screening tool for our sales process. And it also made us do better designs because they actually meant something. So I think those were the steps to us getting to be more successful and taking the fear out of it. Essentially, like at some point you got to take a leap of faith. And that's the magic for sure.
And why do you think that so many people struggle with charging what they're actually worth?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is, if I look at their websites, the pictures are not attractive. They just popped in a couple of fresh plants. Nothing looks lush. Like at the end of the day, it's about branding. And so, if your website photos are terrible, that'll kill you. And so you're better off taking fewer projects with more detailed shots of really cool things. And building your portfolio over time that way, rather than more is not better, better is better. So quality wins at the end of the day.
Yeah, and are there people who focus on quality and still don't charge enough? Is that also an issue?
You end up with more discerning clients with deeper pockets, and there are jobs that are filler jobs. It's hard when you're starting out. Like beggars can't be choosers. Let's face it. So, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of it's based on relationships, not just price. A lot of it's based on timing. When you actually get the quote out, what season it is, all those things have a huge impact.
Okay. And so, sounds like there's a lot of intangibles that go into, like charging what you're worth. And are there some that are maybe more important or to be prioritized more than others?
Yeah, I mean, showing up on time, those are the basics, right? What's in your control. Understanding what the client wants, whether it's sort of an engineering piece that they're worried about failure, or alternately they're looking for creativity, or sometimes it's both. And then understanding who the decision maker is, that sort of drives the success rate in terms of landing work.
So part of the quality that you offer is also in the service, not only in the end result.
Yeah, so it's the process that is as important as the end result. Yeah, it really builds your reputation, and it's amazing. You don't have to spend marketing to do a good job.
So maybe one of the biggest impacts on your financials at the end of the day is actually like this intangible service component.
For sure, it really helps your goodwill, and it's about trust at the end of the day, right? So yeah, there's cheap clients for sure, and I would rather not work for a week and then charge 20% more and pay my people to not work than to just take on any old job and then not get paid. So that's there are clients who are just awful. And so you want to avoid them like the plague. Like it's cheaper to pay your guys to not work. It really is.
And you mentioned this goodwill component. So, there's the intangibles, and they seem to maybe only, actually have a number associated with them on the goodwill part of like your financials. Can you say a bit more about that and why that's important?
Yeah. So you're building up a client list, and getting your invoices out on time goes back to the accounting. All those things are part of that process that show that you have your stuff together. So, when you can tell somebody that, here's what my overhead is, here's what my profit is, sometimes if you get to a situation where you have to negotiate, you can tell them what the numbers are. And then there's really not much of an argument if you're shooting for a 10% profit and the lawyer is billing out at $600 or $700 an hour. And you're billing out, $90 an hour, $100 an hour. It's he can afford it, and so there are a lot more moving parts in a landscaping business, a lot more organization required than a law firm, and that needs to be recovered. So at the end of the day, you got to charge what you got to charge. There's no way around it, and it's interesting though. Like everybody has work. Like if you think about it, I almost never run into people that run out of work. Like maybe you're for a week or 2 or 3 weeks. That's about it. So, you will get more money if you charge more money. That's how it works. If you charge very little money, then you're going to get jobs with poor clients. That's because that's the expectation.
And then how does that translate to goodwill?
Well, you're making more profit, and that ends up hopefully being money to pay yourself back at the beginning, a shareholder's loan, probably to start the business, which is tax free, and it is also building your equity in the business so that your cash position is stronger, or you can pay debt down faster so that your profits are higher, which translates into a better cash position on your balance sheet.
Okay, so what you're talking about is all like business intangibles that lead to this goodwill section on the balance sheet. Like, can you just explain that to, say, someone who doesn't have the context or understand why goodwill is so important and like how it fits in financials?
Right. So goodwill is the intangible part of your business. It's how great your people are. So really, where the true test comes is when you want to sell your business or when you want to buy a business. What premium are you paying for that business? Well, there's the financial piece, there's the management piece, there's the location piece, there's the culture piece, there's the equipment piece, there's the process piece. If all those things are dialed in and you spend the money and invested the money to get all that stuff right, including software, your business is way more attractive to buy. There's just less to fix. And so then you get a better quality buyer and you won't be taken to the cleaners and you'll walk away with some money at the end of the day after you've spent years building this business. So the goodwill is a function of everything you do right. And what you do wrong takes away from your goodwill. So it's not just that you're profitable, it's that your balance sheet is strong. It looks like you've got a safe company. It's very well managed. And that's all part of, it starts with financial management. And pretty much I haven't seen a company that has great financial management and messy operations. It's usually, when that foundational cylinder of the business is running well, then the rest of the cylinders are firing beautifully as well. Mm-hmm. Plus you can do budgeting. You can now forecast what you need to spend to control your expenses and your costs.
And what's it like if you don't have the finances together?
You're guessing. It's just a guessing game. You never can plan. Like your planning is out the window. It means nothing. You're just shooting from the hip. Once you get control of the money, you'll know what to spend on and when to spend it. That's the beauty of financial management. That is a game changer for businesses. Businesses that don't do that, they just struggle or they go out of business eventually. There isn't a business that doesn't understand its numbers that's making money. There's no way.
Mm-hmm. And how hard is it to get that financial clarity?
So it is complex only because there's so many different synonyms, and the accountants like to make things complicated. But the fact of the matter is very simple. It's revenue, sales, same word, minus your cost of goods sold, which is what the customer sees, the labor to do the work, the equipment to do the work, the materials to do the work, and the subcontractors. Then you end up with a gross profit, and then you've got your overhead expenses, or overhead, again, two words, and then you have your operating profit. And that's pretty much all you need to know. That's it. It's that simple. And the overhead is essentially anything that the customer doesn't see. It could be your telephone, your company vehicle, your loader in the yard, your yard rent, your office rent, pest control, could be uniforms, safety, training, all that stuff that isn't job site related is what's called overhead. And so you'll get control over your overhead, and then you'll start making investments instead of just thinking of everything as an expense. So, how do I spend money and get more money as a function of spending the money? A lot of people have a cheap mindset, and they simply look at, how am I going to save money? And they think they're going to get rich saving. That's not how you get rich. You get rich investing. So investing in proper people, proper training, proper equipment, proper systems, proper leadership, proper business education. It amazes me the number of people that do not understand business at all and are running businesses. They just work hard and they do great work. A lot of them do great work. They just never get ahead financially because they just don't know what to do.
So it sounds pretty simple in terms of the numbers that you actually need to see and capitalize on. So, what's the percentage of business owners that are actually properly conscious of their financials?
5%, and that would be high.
And what's the reason that the number's so low?
They don't like numbers. They're afraid of their numbers. They would rather be working, and oftentimes a lot of the entrepreneurs are missing pieces of the skill sets required to manage the business properly, and so they neglect it, and it's woeful neglect. It eventually will come to bite you. Ironically, a lot of the clients that we work with eventually have that come to Jesus moment where it's like, I got to deal with this. This is crazy. I can't keep doing this. And so, and some of them do it proactively. I've got a couple of clients that they started their businesses by setting up their financials properly. The other thing too is most accountants don't know how to set up financials for a service construction business. So you go to your accountant, you think they're going to help you, and it's a disaster. They're tax planners. They're not cost accountants, which is a different animal. Usually you get those in the bigger firms like Deloitte and some of those bigger accounting firms, but they're dealing with, $500 million companies, not $2 million companies. So no one seems to care about the small businesses. And, that's where we come in. We have all the financial chart of accounts ready to go to be set up, whether it's reallocating chart of accounts or starting out fresh. And then you get it right and you'll understand your numbers. Within probably 30 minutes, you can understand your numbers.
So there's some pretty big knowledge gaps, and there's just no education about it. And so 95% of business owners are basically kind of shooting from the hip.
Oh yeah, it's the default mode of most business owners, unfortunately. And so there will come a time eventually where you have to face that and deal with it. There's no other way. So
you can't really grow without it.
You can, it's just you won't be profitable because your money's going all over the place.
Right.
You have no idea where you're spending too much money, or the biggest sin is overspending, and if you don't understand your financials, you won't know where to spend properly.
Right, you can't control the tap.
Correct. Yeah, which tap, right?
Which tap. And so this kind of relates to the issue of cash flow, that when financial management isn't great, it can lead to cash flow troubles. So the next question I have for you is, how did you manage cash flow during leaner seasons, and what strategies work best to keep your business stable?
So we just had a Koivik event, and George is a philosopher. I guess George's philosophy, George as well, but the two of us agreed that you should invoice every 2 weeks, period. That's it. I invoice every 2 weeks for work that's been completed, and then you'll never have a cash flow problem. And if someone doesn't pay you after the 2 weeks, then you stop working. So cash flow is a function of your fear or inability to bill. Milestone billing is not a great way to bill, because if you can't hit the milestone, you can't invoice. The other thing also is, if you bill every 2 weeks, you can understand exactly what your sales cycle is and what your invoicing cycle is, so they're tied together. So when you compare last year's sales to this year's sales, they're correct. It's not off by 6 weeks because I was late invoicing. So every 2 weeks, that's the magic. You tell your clients you're a small business, you need the cash flow. You've got payroll, you've got equipment payments, you've got material payments, and you've got your investment that you've got to, pay back. And so you need cash flow. And the way to get good cash flow is to invoice every 2 weeks.
Yeah, and if they don't like that and how it sounds, then maybe that's a red flag.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, listen, if the person's not going to accommodate you to look at an invoice every 2 weeks and write a check or pay online, then they don't care about you. And so great relationships are built on trust, and it goes two ways. So if I cared about you, I want to make sure that you could pay your bills. And if I don't care about you, then that's a great way to find out.
Mm-hmm. And so financial knowledge helps determine, how frequently you should invoice. It helps, forecast future decisions. And part of all that is, how do you determine pricing for services to make sure that you're profitable and competitive at the same time?
So that's a great question. Essentially, it comes down to what you're billing out per hour, how much you're marking up your materials, how much you're charging to recover your overhead, and then what that translates into an hourly rate based on the total number of hours that you're selling in a year. So there's many different ways to calculate it. It depends on the type of work that you do, how you should charge, and how you should recover those costs. So there are some math formulas for that. And once that's set up, you never have to worry about it again. But getting it set up, that's the first step to get in the right direction. You can't do it without proper financials, by the way. So if you try and recover your costs, well, there's guessing. So there's a number of different methods. One is, copy the leader. There is, just 2.5 times wholesale or 3 times wholesale. The problem is, when you get into expensive materials, you'll start losing the jobs. So the truth of the matter is, you really want to know your costs, and you want to understand how to recover those costs. Or even if you didn't worry about that and you knew it was done properly for you on the back end, then everything you're doing moving forward is correct. So one of the things people forget to do this time of year is, your pricing work for next year at this year's prices, not next year's prices. So imagine inflation's 4%. And you're pricing at this year's prices, and the prices have gone up 4% next year, and you're shooting for a 10% margin, you'll never make your 10% profit, because 4% of it's already gone to inflation, wage increases for your staff, materials, fuel, all those things that go up every single year. So unfortunately, most landscapers are the last ones to raise their prices. And, you really want to be the first one. As a matter of fact, the way to really get ahead is, if inflation's 4%, then you should raise your price 5%. So you're always going to be ahead 1%. The customer doesn't know it. And over 10 years, that turns into a very nice pricing system that the customer doesn't even feel. And it sort of automates the expectation for the existing clients that you have. You're better off working for existing clients than finding new ones. And so, doubling down on that strategy is the best way to go. Builds trust. And, if they're driving Bentleys, believe me, you can rest assured that it's okay that you're driving a nice, F-150 pickup truck that's $100,000. So.
And is there also something there maybe about, like, you're not commoditized if you work for high-end clients and you get business from referrals?
Yeah. So the last thing you want to be is commoditized. That's where they're using you for a price, or even for pricing, where you're doing estimating for people just as a check, a benchmark. So we had a lot of that happen. It really comes down to relationships. Like, why is this person hiring you? Are they hiring you for a price, or are they hiring you because they're scared their job's going to go south and they want quality? And, everybody should be fighting for that quality customer. And so there's a race. I'm sorry, there is a race. There's only so many clients out there. It's not a question of who has the work. It's a question of who has the better clients. And so everything you do right in your process, whether it's your invoicing, your pricing system, proof of what you charge and how you get from A to B, justifying your costs if you have to, is part of that brand and trust building process. So even if your employees think you're making $1 million, it's probably good for them to realize that, it takes years to actually start making a lot of money, because there's so many investments you've got to pay off before you get to a point where your cash flow is like absolutely not an issue.
And so what strategies or tools would you recommend for someone who wants to implement these things and have, clarity over their numbers, but just like doesn't really know where to start?
Yeah, so we have a super cool tool. It's called the Marginal Cost Planner. And it's essentially like what change is going to happen this year compared to next year in terms of my price. So let's say the only change is I raised my price $5,000. Okay, well, I'm $5,000 further ahead. This is over and above inflation. Okay, so okay. And is there any cuts that I can make? Is there any extra stuff that I can sell? Should someone get fired and I hire somebody for less? That'll help your business. Is there an investment I should make? Whether it's a piece of equipment or buying a property or hiring a consultant or whatever it might be that is going to actually save me money or give me some strategic advice to make the next moves and not waste time and money. And so that marginal cost planner, the way it's designed to work is the first part adds revenue. The second part saves you costs, so you're further ahead. And the last part is you're spending money to get better, right? And so most of us don't spend money on getting better. We spend money on getting by. And that's a big distinction. So this tool in about an hour will give you a plan, even without your financials, to show you how you're going to get ahead every single year. And the trick is to be cash flow positive. If you're cash flow negative in a year, even though you're profitable, you're going backwards. You got to be cash flow positive every single year. There was an interesting story about Richard Branson with Virgin Airlines. He wanted to start an airline in England, and so he called up the Boeing and he said, "Look, I want to buy a plane." They're like, "Forget about it. We're not selling you a plane. You don't have the money. Number one. Number two, we don't know if we're going to get paid, whether you're going to go bankrupt." So he was persistent, and so he eventually called up and said, "Hey, listen, like, can I get a used plane?" And they had used planes, and can I lease it? And the only thing I ask is that the first lease payment is 30 days from the signing of the contract. So when he got that deal going, he ended up putting money into an advertising campaign that essentially had these tours and cool trips to all these cool places. And in the airline business, you actually pay up front for your flight. So what happened was he, booked, let's say, 50,000 customers to fly to Barbados and Jamaica and British Virgin Islands. And he had their money at, say, $500 a pop. And then he had these planes, and he didn't have to pay for the fuel for 90 days either. So now he's got this great cash flow. He's got the client's money. He's got fuel that has to be paid 90 days later, and the lease payments are also 90 days from the date of the contract. So he's got no cash flow problems, and cash flow is the most important thing. If you have good cash flow, you have no problems. If you have bad cash flow, even if you're profitable, you can still go out of business. So cash flow is king. And so anything you can do to improve that cash flow is going to make a huge difference in the quality of your life, in the stress that you have, in the ability to make payroll, the ability to make smart financial decisions, not under duress, like I can't afford this now. It really is a killer. And so if you get the cash flow right, you really don't have any problems.
Oxygen.
It is oxygen. Yeah. Yeah. And if there's an abundance of it, you don't even think about it. If there's a shortage of it, believe me, you're gasping. So for those small businesses out there, it's the number one problem to resolve. Number one of all the problems you have, that has to be resolved first.
It's your foundation. And then
It's the foundation.
with a clear head, then you're able to build and grow.
Correct. You're not under stress. Yeah, it just takes the stress away. Yeah. So one of the things that happens is you get into these projects where you're bidding on work, and especially if it's commercial, that's a nightmare. So if you're doing commercial work and you're waiting to get paid 90 days, 120 days, and you get no deposits, you got to have a pretty strong balance sheet or means to borrow to carry yourself through those periods. And then there's always the uncertainty of not getting paid. So the type of work, the design build, the closer you are to the customer, the more likely you are to get paid. The closer you are to the decision making, the more control you have, the less the communication chain is ruined, the less people get in between you and the money, the better situation you're in. So the companies that are more profitable are generally the ones that are design build. There are some exceptions that there's tender build, but really it's like you're getting the job because they're afraid to trust someone else to do the work. And that's the position you want to be in if you're going to be in the tender build world, because there's irrational competition there and people are pricing things and they don't know why their prices are what they are. And then you're competing against insanity. And I see these companies and they're underbidding jobs. I know what their cost structure is. I know what the cost of doing business is. And there's only so many subsidies that you can come up with to cover the business, or they're working 7 days a week. And then you see them get divorced 5 years later and their equipment breaks down on the side of the road. And so all the things that you typically see. The problem is in that short term, you're losing out to those contractors. So the trick is to get the better work, to set the reputation. Design is a great way to get known for great design. Can't emphasize that enough. And then vertically integrate things like planting into your hardscapes, because it's way easier to make money on planting and it really does finish the job. It's what's going to make your portfolio look amazing.
Great. Okay, so I think that's a good place to end it.
Cool.
Thanks.
There's huge risk in the landscape industry when it comes to the capital that you're going to spend on equipment. Learn to use your financials the right way and see what the true risks of asset management is in your business. To help you, we're going to be hosting a free webinar on financial management so that you can see where and when you should spend money and on what. Learn how to make better decisions 100 times faster. Click below to get your tickets. See you there.